Good morning. My name is Julia Klumb. Welcome to Zoo Miami's segment of community newspapers. As I said, my name is Julia Klumb. I'm from the Conservation Action Center at Zoo Miami, and I am joined today by our nutrition department to learn all about animal nutrition. So we actually have an entire department at the zoo dedicated just to what the animals eat. So have you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do at the zoo?
I'm Kibby Treiber. I am the zoo nutritionist at Zoo Miami. I am the first zoo nutritionist at Miami. Been there for a little over 5 years now. And my job is to make sure that we formulate diets that will be healthy for all the animals and then make sure that they get them. And for that,
you have me. My name is Rachael Peck. I am the animal nutrition manager. So those diets that Kibby formulates, the various products that she decides on that are best for our animals to consume, it is my responsibility to make sure we get those products ordered, we have them stocked, we check the quality control, make sure it all looks good and it's up to snuff, since we only want to feed the highest quality food to our animals.
Great. So what exactly is a day in the life of the nutrition center? Like, what do you do? What is the process that you go through when you come in?
For us at the nutrition center, it's actually very busy, very chaotic and hectic. We get in at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're actually some of the first staff members to arrive.
It's
to the
dark
zoo.
at that time.
It is dark in the morning when we arrive to work. We get there before all the rest of the animal keepers do. And then we get in, we get all of our stations set up, and then we just get working on all the animal diets that we have to prepare. Currently, we're preparing about 500 animal diets a day. Okay. And besides just preparing those diets, of course, we have to clean up after that. We have very specific protocols for cleaning, sanitizing everything. Just like humans can get sick from not having sanitary surfaces that are being worked off of, it's the same for our animals. So we do lots of cleaning, washing lots of dishes, so then we have to get ready and start the day over again for the next day.
All right.
And while that's happening, I am busy looking and evaluating our animals in our collection, working with the veterinarians, discussing new animals that may be coming in or animals that are leaving. And then I jump into the middle of their day and have to ask them to find us some new products, make us some new diets. So as Rachael mentioned, it is quite hectic and we're very, very busy, and we like it that way.
And so you take a look at every single animal and what their nutritional needs are?
Correct. So anytime we have an animal arriving, we're going to be evaluating them on a species basis. So looking at what their wild diets are that they consume, understanding their anatomy and physiology, and then having to match that to products that we have available so that we can get those for those animals and make sure that we are meeting their health needs without any health risks. And of course, Rachael and the nutrition team then help put all that together so that every day, every meal, they have those food available to meet their requirements.
And so, I mean, a lot of people have dogs and cats at home, and they have some food items that are familiar to them. Maybe some people have exotic animals like reptiles or hedgehogs or something like that. Do our animals eat any kind of like human food, or is it all very specific to the animals that to their wild diets?
They do eat human food. We actually go grocery shopping at Publix about once a
Publix.
week. Sometimes more than once a week, or other local pet supermarkets, some other groceries as we need certain food products. Most commonly, those items that we are purchasing from the grocery stores are usually going to be food enrichment items. For example, I've brought some ketchup in. So yes, we do give ketchup to some of our animals. It's not a diet item. It's not a staple portion of their diet. They just get it as either a smell or a small taste enrichment. So a keeper might take that bottle onto the exhibit, squirt it around in a few different places, and then it gives the animal something to do, to have to go out on the exhibit and find it, since it's something different for them that's not part of their normal diet. But, we will also purchase things like Jell-O, chocolate pudding for a lot of our primates, especially if they're getting a medication. We can usually hide it in things, just like you might use cheese at home for your dog. We might use chocolate pudding for primates.
So the primates like the chocolate pudding?
They do.
Do they like vanilla pudding too, or just chocolate?
They like vanilla. Sometimes, they will go for other flavors, but they definitely like their sweets as much as we do.
Got it.
Of course, my job is to make sure that they're not consuming too many sweets. But but also indeed matching some of their behavioral requirements, giving them some variety. So even though they may prefer one flavor, then we can try different flavors, and that adds some variety to their environment. As Rachel mentioned, we definitely do use products. We have a number of examples here. So we may be using the same human products for our primates because those animals are physiologically and nutritionally similar. We may be using cat and dog food products that are common and on the grocery store shelves for our cats, dogs, felids, even maybe our hyenids. But then some of our animals are increasingly different than the domestic models that we have. So we may be feeding a browser trees. So we have browse farms. And we have to make sure that we provide that nutrition to them, and that is also a behavioral aspect. We may use hay for lots of our herbivores that are grazers, similar to our horses and cattle that we feed. And then we have insectivores that may be consuming insects, and we have to find access to those sources, which are not as readily available at the grocery store.
So we actually have some insects today, so that you can see what they look like. And then also tell us a little bit about what animals eat these insects.
A large variety of the animals that we have will eat these insects. These ones that I brought today are super worms. So they are 2 to 3 inches long. And a lot of our larger birds, some small mammals, but towards the larger side, will eat these guys. We do have a lot of insectivores at the zoo. I mean, we've got our giant anteaters, we've got sloth bears, hedgehogs, tenrecs, those kind of guys.
Meerkats.
Meerkats, they'll eat them as well. A lot of birds will eat insects. We actually purchase about 300,000 bugs a week.
300,000
individual bugs a week. And that's going to be between these superworms, crickets, mealworms, black soldier fly larvae. And then all of those are also going to be various sizes as well.
And we actually grow some of these bugs, right? We breed them?
We do. We currently are growing these superworms. I believe our cloud team is also growing fruit flies and bean beetles. And then at one point we were growing our own earthworms as well. So we have to, one of the big things that I do is I look at cost comparisons to, should we purchase something or try to grow it ourselves, or what alternative products can we find that are similar? For a lot of our insectivores, we can't feed them a 100% insectivore diet. Part of that is the cost, but part of it, and Kibby can elaborate more, is the bugs that are grown commercially are not actually a complete food item. They're not nutritionally complete for our animal collection.
Why?
So if you think about insects in the wild, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of different species. So these wild insectivores would be consuming those. So they would be getting a wide variety, a wide range of insects that are then eating a wide range of products in the wild. And then that variety of nutrition would provide and meet all their needs. Whereas we have 1 or 2 species, or maybe 6 or 7 species of insects that we're able to feed that are then fed. In this case, these are being housed right now in wheat bran, which is very poor nutrition. So we will provide them, just like we provide our other animals, with key nutrition that will fill up their guts with that nutrition, and then allow that to pass on to the other animals in our collections that we would like to have the vitamins.
So you do all your nutritionist stuff for the bugs also.
Absolutely. So from all the way down to the insects, all the way up to the elephants, our job is never boring. And we have to be very creative in terms of finding those products and making sure they have them, and then how we evaluate the nutrition of all of our collection animals.
So are there foods that animals would eat in the wild that are difficult to find here or hard to source?
Yes, definitely. The most recent one that came up currently, we've been doing, I think, some promoting of Action Indonesia at the zoo. And one of those was eat like an orangutan. So orangutans in the wild will have access to a fruit product called durian. And if you've ever heard of it or know anything about it, when the flesh of durian actually has a very, very strong odor to it.
Really, really bad.
Yes, generally we don't like the smell of it. Now, from what I am told, I have not tasted it myself. It does not taste the way it smells, but the struggle is getting past the smell to be able to eat it.
So that durian challenge that we did at the zoo, I participated in said durian challenge, and it was not pleasant to smell. I can attest to that personally. It did not taste as bad as it smelled, though. You were right. It had a very strange texture that was also not pleasant. But overall, I was impressed. We all were able to eat it. It was fine. We had the frozen variety of durian, which I am told does not smell as much as fresh durian.
Yes, and the reason for that is there are a couple places in South Florida that will grow and sell durian. We are lucky that our climate is that it can be grown down here, but because it is such a specialty product, they are hard to get a hold of, and on an individual basis per fruit, they can be fairly expensive. I am happy to say the orangutans absolutely loved it. Not surprising. It's, granted, our orangutans might not have ever had it before. It was definitely new for them, but they did enjoy it. And that's one of those food products that in the wild they're eating it, but typically in zoos they don't necessarily have access to it.
Yeah, that was very funny to see our orangutans get it, and kind of they were kind of unsure about it at first, but then they really did kind of get into it, and they were like, "This is pretty delicious." And durian, actually, what I learned about durian in eating it is that it's actually illegal to have in markets in certain parts of Asia because of the smell. Because I mean, it'll smell for hundreds of feet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That in some places you also can't take it on the bus because of that smell. Our orangutans loved it, though. It didn't taste as bad as I thought. Anything else that's kind of an interesting food item that animals consume at the zoo?
I think something that's interesting, especially as we're talking about different types of fruit varieties, and a number of our animals, such as the orangs and other primates, do consume a lot of fruit in the wild. The fruit that we get in their grocery store, though, isn't necessarily not even just different species of fruit, but different fruit in that we have modified those through agriculture over thousands of years so that they are extra juicy and yummy and have that lovely texture and don't have that nasty smell, and also do not have a lot of fiber, which we know is very important for ourselves as well. It's also very important for our animals. So they are adapted to have high fiber diets. So when we feed them a banana that we have at the grocery store, which is very yummy and delicious, and they agree with that, that doesn't necessarily meet their nutritional adaptation. So we have to work to balance those diets just as we try for ourselves, and our nutritional needs to balance those diets and make sure that we are providing some of those things that may not be in our grocery store foods that have been modified, supplemented, improved, and enhanced so that we want to pay more money for them and consume more of them.
Yeah, the best way that we can do that is we provide our animals with complete feed diets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the storage rooms that we have at the nutrition center that's floor to ceiling, full of complete feed items.
And I think we actually have a picture of that. It's called dry storage. And so this is our dry storage section at the zoo, and we just got bags upon bags upon bags of stuff.
Bags, yes. So we get anywhere from, I would say, 2 to 5 pallets a week of those food products. So because we can't meet the nutritional needs of a wild diet, there are nutritionists around the United States that work with feed manufacturers, just like dog food and cat food. These specific products are a little bit more exotic, to develop these food products that we can feed to our animals to make sure that they do get a complete nutrition.
And so these are things like monkey biscuits, right?
Yes.
I thought that was kind of a cool thing when I first started working at the zoo, that we had monkey biscuits, and I was like, what is that?
We actually have 5 or 6 different types of primate biscuits. So we've got really small ones for some of our much smaller primates, and then we've got the bigger ones for our gorillas. We have insectivore diet, we have flamingo diet, we've even got crocodile biscuits. For some of our crocs, we do. They're pretty big. They look like a charcoal briquette because they are based out of meat and fish and blood. So
yummy, and those are smelly as well. And these biscuits are essentially serve the purpose sort of like a vitamin does. So if you take a multivitamin, then you're getting some of those micronutrients that you will not necessarily get in an apple off of your grocery store shelf. So we as well are limited to the products that are available. And so this allows us to meet the nutritional requirements, whether it's for a crocodile or whether it's for an anteater or whether it's for some of our primates, with that product. And then we match that to, again, what I call a format feed. So typically this is a fiber feed or something that they have to do their feeding behaviors with. So for our primates, we're going to match those primate biscuits with lots of produce, so fruit items they do have to bite and chew into, lettuce that they have to rip up, durian that is disgusting, that stimulates their feeding behaviors, the interaction between our orangs for the different food items. For our large herbivores, maybe we think of a pelleted feed for a lot of our herbivores to provide those nutrients, but then we have large amounts of hay, or as I mentioned before, browse, that it's going to match their feeding when they spend a lot of time chewing and grazing and plucking. In fact, our giraffe feeding station is another excellent example of that, where we actually have guests come and help us by pretending to be a tree that the giraffes can then come and consume either lettuce or browse from the public, and that helps them to perform their natural feeding behaviors, which would be to pluck and remove and use their tongues and do all those feeding behaviors that they would do naturally in the wild. So we're matching those not just behaviors, but the nutrition as well, the feeding behaviors, the digestion of those high fiber things to the anatomy and the needs of those animals.
That's an awesome point, that actually, if you've ever come to the zoo and you have participated in an animal feeding, you have actually helped our nutrition staff feed our animals proper nutrition. We have different kinds of things that we feed out to the animals at those feeding stations. We have camel feeding, we have giraffe feeding, we have rhino feeding. Usually right now, rhino feeding is closed for a little bit while we renovate their space. But we also have parrot feeding, which has nectar that we feed to our parrots. But they don't only get lettuce, so they get browse, and browse is kind of an interesting word that we use at the zoo. And browse just means like pieces of trees and plants. And how would you explain browse?
So our browsing species are largely our herbivore species that are going to be living in a forested and herbaceous community. So they're in the environment and they're finding all these little fresh leaves. Grass is the opposition to browse. So that is a certain group of plants that tends to be high in certain types of fiber, maybe a little less digestible. So those animals that are plucking those leaves, particularly is how we tend to think of browse, are going to be animals that it's more appropriate to feed leaves and branches.
Yes, like big branches. And we have a browse grove at the zoo, where we'll grow a lot of the trees that animals particularly like to eat, like ficus. What are some of the other trees and branches that?
So yes, we have, I think I have a browse list of over 300 species now.
Wow.
So since we're a subtropical zoo, we have species that no one else has, and we have lots of them, and we have lots of growing. So we do use a lot of native plants. Gumbo limbo is a favorite. And then we have some other plants like Hong Kong orchid is a favorite. So what we try to look for a variety in browse, so different sizes of leaves, different branch sizes. So our rhinos and our elephants maybe want to chew up a larger branch that may be more natural to their behavior and their digestion. And then our smaller animals, some of our small antelope, even some of our small cavies, so our really small mammals that are herbivorous, our porcupines that should eat more fiber, maybe consuming a softer leaf, as well as being supplemented with other fiber feeds like lettuce and things that are available.
We also have snakes and some other animals that are carnivorous.
Yeah, carnivore diet. So I think we have an example of a Marabou stork diet up there. The rats, fish, meat. Yep.
There you go.
So that's an example of a Marabou stork diet.
So a Marabou stork is actually a bird, is it not?
It is.
So when you think of carnivorous animals, I wouldn't immediately think Marabou stork.
Yeah, and these guys are pretty tall. I mean, they can be 4 to 5 feet tall. At the zoo, we don't really have many on exhibit. We keep them in our back areas because they are a breeding pair of birds. Occasionally, if we have chicks, they might go out on exhibit, but they will get fish. They get a complete ground meat product that's similar to ground beef in its consistency. What we use at the zoo, though, we don't use beef products. We actually use horse meat products. It is leaner than beef, and it's got a lower cost than beef does. But we still don't sacrifice on the quality at all there either. And then, of course, we've got rats, mice, rabbits, guinea pigs, chicken, quail. We've done goat, we've done sheep, pretty much any kind of meat product that you can think of. We did alligator a couple of weeks ago. Sad to say, the only animals that enjoyed the alligator were the giant river otters. Okay. Which makes sense.
That makes sense.
In the wild, giant river otters will be eating caiman. So it's not exactly the same, but they enjoyed it. And even if the animals didn't eat it, that we offered it to, because we offered it to harpy eagles and our hunting dogs, lions, hyenas, it was still an enrichment item for them. I think the hyenas rolled in it. They like the smell of it. They didn't like the taste of it.
It's like
Less
my
nutritious
dog.
that way.
Yeah. Like my dog will roll in things that smell pretty bad.
Yep. So sometimes, we have hits and misses on stuff. But that's one of the reasons why we have such a large variety, because we also don't want them to get bored with their diet either.
Yeah, I think that's just as important in animals as it is in humans. Enrichment is anything that's going to invoke that animal to do their natural behavior. So they're going to forage for things, they're going to smell things, they're going to rip things apart, all of those things. There's olfactory enrichment, which can be smells. So sometimes we'll put perfumes out on exhibit, but also food items are an important part of that enrichment, where the ketchup comes in, where apparently alligator comes in as a smell enrichment. Different food items that they can taste that are either sweeter or maybe more salty, or something that is kind of a novel thing for them, that is something that either that they maybe would get in the wild, or maybe something that they wouldn't get in the wild.
And when we think of feeding behavior as well, we are a social species. So I'm sure many can relate to the fact that we eat socially. That is part of our communication with other people and how we interact with other people. And that is true for some of our species also. So Rachael mentioned the hunting dogs. That's a pack of animals. They have a lot of pack behavior. So we do want to feed them with a variety of different size items, and sometimes large carcass items, so that they have to interact and they have to learn to share, and they have to learn who's dominant and submissive. And that's critical, especially when we have breeding and reproduction. So we have a growing pack, and the parents now need to teach the next generation how to behave as a pack as well, so that when they go to their own institutions and their own other packs, then they will be performing those natural behaviors, interact well, and then hopefully successfully reproduce and carry on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing too, that nutrition isn't just there to sustain our animals. In the hunting dog case, it is there to actually help build social structure, and they use those carcass feedings in order to do that. But we also feed carcasses to our lions sometimes, and our tigers. And I've seen those. They're very cool. I've seen them kind of hang pieces of meat from the trees, and our tigers will run out and jump up and perform those behaviors that they would in the wild, and they get to exercise a lot of their jaw muscles.
Absolutely.
And a lot of other things.
And that comes back to that idea of format feeding. So for our carnivores, certainly ripping apart any of those whole prey items, chewing on the skin, that can help with their teeth and their dental health. And then also that's fiber that goes into the digestive tract, which is also important to them. And they get to do those grinding. They get to do lots of exercise, which is also important for our animals, just like it is for us. And that is all part of their overall health.
For sustenance, we feed our animals for social structure. We also get to do some fun things with our animals, like make them birthday cakes.
We do. Most recently, I think the biggest birthday cake we made recently was for Dollop, our Asian elephant.
We have a picture of Dollop's birthday cake, and it is under Dollop's B-Day. There you go.
So that took about 3 to 4 weeks to make. So with the help of the elephant team, they came in and, we bounced ideas around, and we built it in the freezer and then popped it out.
So it's a big popsicle, basically.
Oh yeah, the trash can that we used to build it was, I think, a 32-gallon trash can.
All right.
That we filled, and then there was a
big
5-gallon topper, and then our side pieces there that spelled his name, and I believe he turned 55. And then certain times of the year, like right now, we're actually gearing up for Halloween, so. Just like how, we want to carve pumpkins and everything else, we will do some pumpkin enrichments for some of our animals once a year during Halloween.
We go.
So
that's our meerkats.
One of our meerkats hanging out in a pumpkin from last year. So, we do what we can. And this is enrichment for the animals, but it's also
enrichment for people. Absolutely. I've participated in some of those where we make some of the diets or carve the pumpkins, and it is extremely enriching for the human variety as well. What other pictures do we have on here? So we also have a hippo picture, and this is Nimue.
Yeah, this was from his 2nd birthday, so he got a small cake.
And that cake, what is that cake made out of?
That cake is made out of what we would, I guess, call Hippo brownie, I guess. So
Hippo brownies.
Essentially, we took the complete feed product that we feed to our hippos, and we ground it into a powder, and then we mixed it with some pureed banana and some gelatin to make almost like cake layers. And then we stacked those layers on top of each other, and I think those have mashed potatoes between the layers.
Delicious.
And then it's decorated with kale and shredded carrots.
Speaking of brownies, we also have Primate Brownies that we make for our primates, and these are for gibbons, correct?
Those particular pans for gibbons, we also give them to mainly our chimpanzees. Our chimpanzees aren't the greatest at eating their complete biscuits. So we trick them a little bit by spicing up their biscuit and turning it into a brownie. So that also has pureed banana in it. It's got some blueberries in it. It's got some additional vitamins added to it. And they will eat that more readily than they'll eat just the plain biscuit.
So is that like special to them that they're like, oh, I get brownies today and that's delicious?
That is the hope.
Because when I get brownies, it's pretty awesome. I love brownies.
These are testaments to creativity, patience, and also some nutritional science. So we're trying to literally smash a lot into one product that they will hopefully then appreciate and consume. But just like people, some of our animals can be very picky, and so sometimes we have to work from a variety of angles with different products to finally narrow down onto that one that they are going to be like, oh yeah, this is great. I will take my medication in this. Happily, I will eat my nutrients in this. I'll take some fiber because, of course, the broccoli is going to be the last thing that's consumed. So we have to work with them to make sure that we reach that balance and achieve all the goals that we have for those items. So I believe our chimps are also getting a Flintstone vitamin to help them, and they do consume that because it does have a little tiny bit of sugar in it. So there are multiple strategies that we will use to consume them. But yes, we have specially formulated, designed, experimented, and come up with these brownies specifically because the animals do prefer those particular ones and those particular flavors.
Cool. So you have a PhD in nutrition and dietetics, no?
Yes, that is correct. It's technically in horse nutrition and exercise physiology. So most nutritionists in zoos nowadays will have an advanced degree. Essentially, we have a background in nutritional and health science, but that can come from all different directions. So I was looking at horses, but I worked with nutritionists that were human dietitians. And then, look, primates. There's so much information that has crossover. We have nutritionists that have come from livestock feeding, cattle, swine. So lots of amazing nutrition that then can apply to our hoof stock, our antelopes, our giraffe, our Red River hogs. So we have almost 4,000 animals. So there is so much information that is beneficial for us. And then, of course, the creativity factor, no matter what, because I may have a background in horse nutrition, but I am feeding these bugs. I am feeding elephants. Actually, one of the entryway for me into the zoo was elephants because horses and elephants are nutritionally similar, or their digestive tracts are similar.
Really?
So starting with horses, someone was looking for someone to help with elephant nutrition. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Sign me up for that.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the next week they were like, and now you have to feed some sharks and a pigeon. And
okay.
and that was very exciting. And the sharks did
horses,
not appreciate
elephants,
yes.
sharks, and pigeons. All right.
And that is the day in the life of a zoo nutritionist.
Well, that's very cool. I didn't know that either, but I was always interested in how do you get into zoo nutrition. It's definitely a cool part of the zoo that most guests don't actually get to see, which is why I think it's kind of cool that we have the feeding stations that you can actually participate in what our nutrition department does. You guys make hundreds and hundreds of diets a day for all of the different animals in the zoo. So they'll be packing little bags of diets like we have over here.
I brought a sample diet here.
So they'll be packing diets like that for individual animals. They'll be doing carcass feedings. They'll be growing bugs, all of these different things that you may not actually see.
So this diet here is actually a parrot diet for a blue-fronted Amazon. So this particular diet has our complete feed in it. You can see that in the bottom. Our parrots actually get 3 whole nuts a day with the shell on. That's part of that behavior.
Absolutely.
We want them to have to crack
break the shells.
Have to break that nut out of the shell themselves. And on this particular day of the week, this parrot diet has greens. So it's got some kale, romaine, and collard greens in it, as well as a little bit of apple. So now they don't get the same thing every day. So this parrot would not get that exact same diet every single day.
So it changes every single day.
Every day. So tomorrow that parrot will get the same complete feed and the same nuts. However, the produce items will likely be carrot and orange, maybe, or papaya and sweet potato. So those change with quite frequency.
Very cool. Well, when you come out to the zoo, You are welcome to participate in our feeding stations. You can always think of our nutritionists while you do that, when you're feeding the camels or the birds or the giraffes. And hopefully, when the rhinos come back in, you can feed the rhinos again. We actually have right now on Mondays, $15 Mondays. You can come into the zoo for $15 every Monday up until September 27th. And we are about out of time right now. So we are going to say goodbye and welcome you at the zoo. You may not be able to see Kibby and Rachael at the zoo, but you can always think of them when you see animals eating all of their nutritious food items. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.